Hi, I'm Alvaro Henrique and we are back to our course with Leo Brouwer's study number 10. It's a fantastic study and it's the last of his first 10 simple studies, and these first 10 simple studies, they mark the studies Brouwer composed during his Afro-Cuban era, Afro-Cuban style of writing. Leo Brouwer had so far 3 different compositional styles throughout his career, and for each one of them he has a cycle of 10 studies. The next 10, the 11th to the 12th study, they are from his avant-garde style, and the more modern ones, the nuevos Estudios Sencillos, are part of his postmodern, or other prefer call themselves neo-simplicity style of writing. So there we have here our Afro-Cuban rhythm, and the way the piece is written already shows that. Maybe not with fireworks, with neon lights, but it does show. Pay attention. It's a 2/4 measure, and we have 2 eighth notes, 1 pause of an 8th note, then the last note of this measure is E on the bass, is an 8th note. Normally, in all the pieces, what we would see is E with just one little flag separated from everything else. That's not what we see here. We see the low E connected to the first note of that beat, the next beat. This shows indeed that Leo Brouwer considered these rhythm cells of these 2 notes together as one simple thing. And if we consider marking the first note of each one of those rhythmical groups, we reach a rhythm which would be 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2, and this 3 plus 3 plus 2 is a very common rough Afro-American rhythm. You can hear that from the tango in South America, in Argentina. You see also in the music of Northeast Brazil, and of course in Cuba as well. So you should stress and make an accent on the very first note of each group. This when we face this situation, we call that a emula. The most common emula is writing 3 as if it were 3 measures of 3 beats instead of 2 measures of 3 beats. But emula itself is every situation where what's supposed to sound and the way that's written is different from what the measure sign indicates. So the measure sign indicates that it should sound 1 2 1 2, but it does sound 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2. Okay, so this, you will see that in other pieces. This is not something so crazy or unusual as you might feel, especially when you're seeing that resource for the very first time. So study counting, as I said, 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2. Once more, 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2. Okay, so that the first thing that you have to do is study this rhythm in these measures. I recommend you should work this piece as if you were building a house. And first you put one brick, then a different brick, and so on until you have a house. brick by brick. That's what we are going to do here. Every group of two measures is like a brick. And brick, you are going to work very hard on each brick, each group of two measures, and you're tying them one after another. You are not going to try to play the piece from beginning to end at once. If you do so, it will be a lot of information at once. And when that happens, your brain chooses which information the brain will learn and which information the brain will refuse to learn. And normally, what the brain chooses to learn is what we already know. And what we need our brains to learn is what we don't know, exactly what our brains usually refuse to learn when there is too much information. So by diminishing the amount of information, you are making sure that you are working in a quantity of information which your brain will be able to learn everything. That's what you are going to do. So by working brick by brick, by each group of two measures, it's common, it's okay if after 1 week of work, you will be able to play only until half the piece. That's okay. That's common. Don't despair. You are doing well if you are doing that. Okay? So let's go back to our first brick, our first group of two measures. One thing that is important to notice here, I prefer to play them, those two notes, with M and A. Why? Because when I look at my fingernails, the curvature of my A nail and my M nail are the ones that are more similar. My I nail is very different from the other ones. All the students that I have, their nail curvature is different, and for them, the nail shapes that are more close together are I and M. And for them, it's better to use I and M to play those strings because they blend more. In my case, it's M and A. Watch your fingernails, look at the curvature, choose the fingers which have the most similar curvature to play together, and of course, trust your ears. Try to make those notes blend as one thing only. Nice. It's also very good to use staccato, but because you need also some speed on the right hand, it's normal that you play the staccato only with the right hand, only in the strings you're playing, but some harmonics are sounding. So to build those harmonics as well, I mute also with the left hand. So on the pause, my left hand is also muting the strings as if I were going to do a barré on that, or by touching lightly with the hand all the strings. And the last group, I also like to reinforce the staccato by damping after each note. Not. Okay? Just this simple movement like a barré is enough. But one more thing that we have to consider in those last two notes, we are about to begin a very fast scale after those notes. So it's important for you to have at least the A finger very prepared to start playing on the first string. Therefore, instead of playing in the last two groups as the first two ones with M and A, for example, I prefer to play the last two groups with P and I, so I have an aim already prepared to start playing the scales. You can also play with both strings with thumb, the P. Also works, especially if you help the damping with the left hand. then you're ready to start even with I. I prefer on the next scale, I'm ready to go into the next group, to use the following right hand fingering. A, M, I, M, A, M, I, M, and so on, with using the three fingers. Some people got confused when doing scales with three fingers. They prefer doing with only two fingers. I must remind you that this is a study, so this is one of those rare opportunities that you should work on some skill you don't have yet in order to improve your skills. But sometimes we have deadlines. You have exams to study and we have to prepare those pieces very fast. So if you are working in your normal pace, in normal conditions, I would suggest you to insist fingering the right hand as I said. I, A, M, I, M, and so on. So you can develop playing scales with three fingers. However, if you have a deadline, it's best if you start playing with I. And it's very important to be with I, because by starting with I, you avoid crossing. You may have heard of crossing already. I have mentioned in previous lessons. When we place our right hand normally, the A should be playing the highest note, the M a lower one, the I a lower one, and the thumb the lowest one. When we have our hand in a contrary position of that, we have a crossing. Very often, when you are having trouble playing scales fast, probably there is a crossing going on there. By just watching out your fingering to avoid crossings, you will be able to play it faster. When you start with I, you avoid crossing. Look, I am, now I have to change string, but that's fine. The M just played the G and the I is going to be the D flat. And so on. There will be no crossing with this fingering, but you have to begin with I. And to begin with I, you have to play those last two notes from the second measure with thumb. And then you have the I ready to start the scale. Okay, let's move on. There is a repetition of the very same material. Every time when you have a repetition of the very same measures, just after you just heard them, you have to do some difference. It's the echo effect. Normally we do a contrast in dynamics. So first time we play forte, the second time we play piano. But it's also very good to make some contrast of color. You can play first time a metallic, for example, and then the second time dolce. You can also combine dynamics and color, those contrasts, those two contrasts at the very same time. But you do need to make something different. Playing the two measures of repetition exactly like you just played, just after the listener have just heard that, is like telling the same joke twice for the very same people on the same night. It's boring. Okay, next group of two measures, we have a chromatic scale with ascending slurs. Then it's very important, this is key. When you're going to have those slurs, you play the first note, the F for example, and then we are going to slur the second note, the F sharp for example, release the previous finger. It's very important to release the previous finger. It's part of the old school of guitar to say that chromatic scales and slurs, you should keep your fingers there. However, if you do keep your finger, you are wasting your energy to add more tension to your hand and therefore losing speed. And you want speed in this scale, in this area here. And remember, what happens outside the guitar will happen on the guitar. Notice that outside the guitar. Keep your 4 fingers on the air and move them as fast as possible. Very easy, isn't it? Then have the 4th finger hold on your hand and try to move the other 3 very fast. Very easy on the first finger, quite some challenge on the 2nd finger. The 3rd finger is quite hard. But let's make it worse. Let's keep fingers 3 and 4 holding on your hand and try to move the other 2 as fast as possible. Finger 1 already is facing some problems, and finger 2, well man, it's quite challenging to do fast movements. That will also happen on the guitar. So when you hold 2 fingers, you are making the other 2 free fingers to move harder. Release, and then it is easier to play. So let's release. So play the F, slur, and release. It's very important to practice that. Play, release, play, release. Watch out. If it's too hard for you, study without the metronome. Think first, play and release. Think first, play and release. A sharp. Think B. Think first, visualize your finger 2 going there, play and release. Then it's time to play the F with finger number 3. Think, visualize, play and release. Then finger 4 on F sharp. Think, visualize, do the slur and release. So my aim is not so good. I have to practice a little bit more. But that's how if you're facing trouble, practice like that. But if you play those 2 measures on the metronome slowly, paying attention to release the fingers, that may be enough for most cases. Okay, then we have similar ideas going on, like repetition, and the very same idea also expanded. So the very same idea, play, slur, release, and go on, okay? Then we have this rhythm. It's very important to mark the rhythm of the top notes. Be very cool with this bass. And also with the next E. So, very light, and the D, B much stronger. Okay, this is where the rhythm really is. And then 2 arpeggio. I find it very nice to make some color contrasts here, especially when we have those unusual harmonies. And then we have some more slurs with also the very same idea. Release, play, release, play, release. It's not slurred, but it's the same idea. You're going to hold with your left hand finger only the fingers that are holding notes that are sounding at the moment. Of course, you can also prepare on the air for the next notes, but it's very different to prepare on the air for the next notes than holding the fingers on the strings and accumulating tension. Okay? Fine. We're moving on. The same ideas are happening. We have repetitions, and let's go to the end of the piece. There is a very good trick for you to end in a very interesting way. We all want to end that with strength, with power, especially if you play the right. You have tuned those scales and play them very fast. You are proud of what you have done, so it's quite tempting to end. And then noise. Or worse, you're trying to do some very long, strong rest stroke, and then you have those scratch noise with your thumbnail on the strings. Also, extra noise you don't need. So do like that. Play I, slur, M, and to avoid the temptation to play as strong as possible this last note, play with I. Because no matter how strong you want to play that, with I, the chance for you to make some noise while playing the last note is lower. Have fun!